Hey guys, welcome back to the Bitcoin Bunker. I'm your host, Satoshi Down Under. And this video, we're going to talk about physical versus abstract power and how that relates to Bitcoin. But last episode, I forgot to look at the chart. So let's have a brief look. Our rally that we had looked like we were picking up some steam. That was pretty short-lived. We're back at 88,800. So we look like we're forming a bit of a rising wedge there, and we've broken through. So I think maybe there's a chance we'll see some more downside. Not that we care on this show. We're dollar cost averaging. We're buying sats every time we can, every payday, and that's the method that I advocate for. I think trying to pick the bottoms and the tops and get fancy and trade in and out. If you're a trader, cool, that's probably for you if you like reading the tea leaves of the charts. But over the long time, Bitcoin's proven that if you dollar cost average and you're willing to lower your time preference and hold for minimum of 4 years, you will always be in profit, historically speaking, that is. So what else is happening in the charts? We've seen silver still on a rip. So the silver boys are super stoked. I'm actually going to talk about silver and gold again in another episode. We've touched on it. I think it was episode 1, looking at the properties of silver, gold, and Bitcoin, looking into the portability, divisibility. We've chatted about that. But remind me next episode, I want to talk about the spreads and if you're buying physical silver and physical gold, what your upfront costs are compared to if you're buying Bitcoin. So I won't touch on that now, but it was just a thought came to mind, another episode I want to do. But yeah, we're looking at silver on an absolute rip, parabolic here. If we look at any other charts historically, this probably could keep going for another couple of months, right? But typically when you see a parabolic run like we did with Bitcoin 2017, there is usually a sharp pullback. So the faster you go up, the faster you usually come back down. If we get a steady growth up, it's usually better. It means that the pullbacks aren't as severe. So be good to keep a close eye on our mates, the silver bugs, because they're having a bloody good year. But anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about physical power versus abstract power. So we'll bring up Lowery. So Jason Lowery, he's in this book behind me, Softwar, and it was a pretty controversial book when it came out. A lot of people didn't like Lowery speaking of Bitcoin in terms of a weapon, but I think it's a very apt description. And it's a weapon for us against the central bankers and against fiat money as a whole, right? And what he advocates for in his book is he looks back in history and he talks about how nations defend themselves, how an individual defends themselves from would-be attackers, and physical power always trumps abstract power. So what's abstract power? Well, abstract power would be something like our laws, things written down, the UN, organizations that decide they're going to talk about, agreements. We won't attack this nation. We're all part of some club or some organization for world peace or whatever. So these things, these laws, rules, agreements between nations are a form of abstract power, meaning that if someone wants to come and physically invade your country or physically come to your home and knock your door down, it doesn't really matter what abstract rules or laws the society has to prevent that from happening, because when push comes to shove and someone wants to take your stuff, physical power will always win out in the moment anyway, you know. Someone comes and kicks your door down and robs you, yep, okay, there's legal repercussions and that person risks being caught later. But in the moment, that doesn't save you, right? Pieces of paper don't save you. Physical power is what saves you. So essentially that was part of Jason Lowery's thesis. I'm simplifying it a bit. But how does that relate to Bitcoin, you'd ask? Well, we know that Bitcoin is hard capped at 21 million coins. We've talked about this many times, and we know that it's backed by physical watts or energy, watts of electricity, right? So it's not created out of thin air like fiat money is. If you have Bitcoin, you've had to expend electrical watts in order to mine that Bitcoin. And we've talked about the mining process a little bit in an early episode. If you haven't seen that, go back to that one. But essentially, all the miners, as we've discussed, are giving up electrical energy, electricity, watts, in order to hope to receive Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin is directly backed by energy. And the fiat system is backed by abstract power. So who's got the abstract power? Well, central banks, the Federal Reserve in the US, every country's got its own central bank. And these guys are the ones that are determining the price of money, how much money can be put into the system. And they're backed up by more abstract power, which is laws. Laws saying you can't use anything other than our approved currency. Judges that will enact those laws, police that will, and other special groups, CIA and whoever else, who will basically enforce these rules, right? So the whole structure of fiat money is based on abstract power. And beyond that, it's based on a common belief in that abstract power. So if you think about why are we all using the US dollar, or here in Australia we use the Australian dollar, it's no longer backed by gold or silver. It's not backed by anything. It's backed by our shared belief that it has value. And that's it, really. And further to that, I guess it's backed by the barrel of a gun, as we've said before. Or, in the case of the US dollar, it's backed by the world's largest military forces out there, the US Army, the US Navy. So it's backed by the fear of going against this abstract power, these rules, because countries know there's a physical cost behind that, right? They fuck around, they find out. The US military will come in and destroy a country, right? That's what's protecting the US dollar at the base level. And what I find funny in the news with Trump this year, which he's got off to a bloody cracker, I reckon, like he's just pulling all sorts of shit out of left field. But I think I'm not a critic of Trump. I'm kind of indifferent to the guy, but I can appreciate some of the things that he's doing, in that when he went in and ripped out Maduro from Venezuela in probably the world's shortest military operation from the US, he's showing you physical power trumps abstract power, right? So he went against all of these international codes, laws, gentlemen's agreements, whatever else. He just went against all of that. And he showed the world that physical power trumps abstract power every day of the week. So you don't have to like what he did, or you can think it's right or wrong, whatever you want. But that display of force proves to you that physical power trumps abstract power every day of the week. So what we have to do as individuals is we need to protect ourselves in the same way. So how do we do that? Well, if we decide to opt out of a phony, corrupt system based on abstract power and move to something real based on physical watts, electricity consumed, backing our currency, we can protect ourselves better. So I think Bitcoin's a lot bigger than just money. We'll get into that in future episodes. But even if we consider it as just money and a medium of exchange, wouldn't you want to choose the medium of exchange that has some backing to it? Not just the backing of violence or potential violence through military means, or abstract power in the terms of this dollar is worth $1 because we say so, even though we've just printed 40% more of them in the last 5 years. So we need a currency if we're going to move forward as a civilization. We need a medium of exchange that we can all trust, but that is trustless, meaning that we don't have to trust one individual, whether that be the President of the United States or someone else, to tell us that our money holds value, because we can just prove it. We know energy was expended to mine these Bitcoin, and we're holding something that has that inherently built into it, right? So abstract power, it's always going to get trumped by physical power. We're seeing that with Trump at the moment. Now his next threat is, I'm going to take part of Greenland or whatever, and, they're in the EU, they're having dummy spits over, all of his rhetoric. But I think it's just a good reminder that physical power is always going to trump that abstract power, and write whatever laws you want. But if someone comes knocking on your door and they want your shit, you best know how to fight, right? So that's a bit of a rant on that one. I want to talk about the US debt clock briefly while we're here, because this will just further illustrate the point that the fiat money that we're using is just a Ponzi scheme. So I don't know if any of you newbies have checked out this website, but a lot of the Bitcoiners know of it. It's the US national debt clock. Now, this is the US. Don't worry, everyone else is in masses of debt too. So don't kid yourself into thinking, oh, well, I'm not in the US, so this doesn't apply to me. What we got here is this clock just keeps going up. US national debt's at 38.6 trillion. I think a few months ago we were at 31 trillion and everyone was freaking out. Here we are, a few months later, we're at 38.5. And this will just keep going. I'd come in and check on it from time to time. This just keeps going because we live in a debt-based Ponzi scheme where the Fed, central banks, have to continue to issue credit or currency to keep the whole thing afloat, right? And there's a guy, he's actually a gold bug from way back, Mike Maloney, and he has a really good series. I think it's like a 10-part series on the Federal Reserve, the invention or the creation of fiat money in modern times, and versus gold. And he talks about the purchasing power of the US dollar and how it's devalued over time. And he talks about how the Federal Reserve issues currency, then the banks all go out taking deposits, but then they essentially leverage up those deposits and create the money out of thin air and then add interest to that. So if you think about it in simple terms, this debt can never be repaid because there's never going to be enough money to pay back that initial balance plus the interest accrued. So Mike Maloney, shout out to you, man. That was a real good eye-opening series you did for me before I got right down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. But I think to become a real Bitcoiner, you guys have got to immerse yourself in what is money. So I've been thinking the other day about what is it that converts someone to a Bitcoiner, and I might go through like a 10-point thing, my thoughts around it. But I think one of them is you have to understand money, and you have to understand the money we currently use, how it's created, who creates it, why does someone get to create it, why isn't it a decentralized system that we can all opt into voluntarily? Why are we forced into it? So once you start questioning what is money, which is a thing we use every day, it's 1/2 of every transaction, but I don't think many of us get through much of our lives without actually asking what it is, where it's really coming from. So that's a bit of a rant for tonight. And if you want, go check out Softwar from Jason Lowery. They're getting pretty hard to find in hard copy. I think they're going for about $500 secondhand on Amazon now. Plays a pivotal role in understanding Bitcoin and also its potential uses beyond money. I think coming into the AI future and how we're going to be able to defend ourselves online. So great book. If you hunt around, you'll be able to get it free PDF version. And through the episodes, we'll keep talking about Softwar because there's a lot of good topics in there. But yeah, that was the episode. Just wanted to talk about real power, physical power versus abstract power, and how that relates to Bitcoin. So hope you enjoyed this one.